Good afternoon. Today is the 22nd of September. It's time for yet another not particularly interesting, very vague and probably quite boring vlog. So last week I had the pleasure of doing another job for a client in West London. Back in the early days of my work, which was around 8 years ago, I started, 9 years ago, I started sourcing cars for clients. I used to do a lot of jobs over in West London. One of the reasons for that is because I lived in Epsom, and we have actually filmed some videos on my channel in Epsom before. The place where the channel started, which is actually a country part, is outside Epsom. But it was much more common back in the day rather than living down here in Hampshire. But I was summoned to West London to find a car for a client. One thing you must realise about doing jobs there, a couple of things about the car that you tend to source typically, and also what the dealerships are actually like, or the sellers are like there. First of all, automatic cars are absolutely king in London. Everybody wants automatic cars. They also want cars, of course, which are compliant with the ultra emission zone. So that means automatic petrol cars are far more expensive than manual ones. Also, smaller cars tend to be more popular because they're more fuel efficient. So you end up with something like, for example, of one of the cars we looked at, a 11-year-old Vauxhall Mocha automatic with petrol engine with 55,000 miles on the clock being worth about £6,500, which sounds like a lot of money for an 11-year-old Mocha, but it just isn't, which I know is really silly, but that's just the way that it tends to be these days. Certain cars are more expensive. So we needed an automatic car. My client wanted a bit more space for a driver than his current Mazda 6. So we looked at a couple of them. First of all, we looked at the Ford Kuga. Now, the Ford Kuga, the first generation one, was only sold as a petrol with a 2.5 turbo 5-cylinder Volvo white block engine. I'm not joking, it's a very similar engine to the one used in a Mark II Focus ST. The platform that the Kuga used was also similar to a Mark II Focus. So that's no surprise. But that was the only petrol available. And this case with an automatic gearbox in titanium spec. For some reason, they positioned the Kuga far more upmarket than some other cars could have been. And this thing, it absolutely flew. I think it's got just short of 200 horsepower, and it's very, very quick. The problem with one of those is that although it's a nice petrol Volvo white block engine, an automatic gearbox, and it's got loads of power, is that because it's a 2010, it actually falls into super tax. And so you're paying, I think, something like £780 a year to tax it. And also the fuel economy, well, it's not very good. I've owned myself a couple of white block engine Volvos with five-cylinder units. They are not cheap to run. So that was a concern. The problem with the car, though, was not so much that. It was the fact that it looked okay for £5,500. It was a private seller. But the paint was peeling off, which at the end of the world, you can get it fixed if you need to, but that's money you didn't really have to spend. The other thing is, although it had an enormously comprehensive service history from 2010 to 2019, which alone always took it to the local Ford dealer down in Hampshire, ironically enough, the service history kind of stopped around 2019. So the past 6 years, we're not quite sure what happened to it. The basic checks I did, opening the bonnet and having a look at the oil was black as anything, and the coolant was a bit low. Obviously, it's the most basic thing you do when you look at a car with a petrol engine. You open the bonnet and have a look at the oil and the coolant and things like that. And this was strange because the owner said it had been serviced in February, which is not that long ago. So you wouldn't expect it to be sort of a bit sludgy and things. A little bit of contaminant on the bottom of the oil filler cap, but that's quite normal for a car. It's only done 50,000 miles. So on paper, yeah, sounded good, but we got there and no, not the best I've seen, unfortunately. So we saw the 2014 Mocha I just mentioned. Actually, it was in nice condition. It was sort of upper specification one. So it had, I think dual zone climate control and a little colour screen and things like that, which is not, the last ones don't have that. Now, the Vauxhall Mocha, I don't necessarily think it's that bad a car. A lot of people say that they are, but my experience is they're not that bad as long as you are realistic about your expectations with them. They're not the most exciting things to drive. They're not necessarily the most exciting to look at, and they've got a Vauxhall badge on them, so they're not necessarily desirable like something like an Audi would be, or a Mercedes or something like that. Also, the 1.4 turbo, which you'll find in probably most of the automatic ones you're looking at, it does have a problem with the turbos. They tend to sort of sometimes go. It's actually not the biggest job in the world to do because it's quite a common thing. But of course, if you're talking a car that's like £2,000-3,000 with a turbo, you're probably going to spend maybe £500-600 having that done, and that's quite a lot of money. This car obviously is worth a lot more than that, so if it were to happen, which is not inevitable or anything, it would be worth doing it because it's automatic, and so it's worth a fortune. Nicely presented car at a dealership that I think I've actually used before in West London to source some other cars for two clients, both black Kia Venga automatics, about 18 months apart, I think it was. So yeah, that was fine. It was missing a parcel shelf and missing a spare tyre, but you can just go on eBay and buy those if you really need to. Then we sort of took a break, and we thought we would just see another one because we were going to see Mercedes C-Class we wanted to see, but that's sold by the time we kind of rung up. So we're going to see another Mocha. So the problem was with this one was that it was in an area that I won't actually mention because I don't want any prejudice about anything, but it has a reputation for not being the nicest area of London I've ever been to. And when we got there, it was very confusing to find the dealership. The place was as dusty as anything, and the car, although it looked nice in the photographs, it was really not good. The wheels were all curbed, the coolant was low. A lot of the interior was a little bit tatty. The sort of silver bit on the Vauxhall badge has sort of come off, which I know is not a big problem, but it just really lent to sort of a kind of feeling of neglect. And then Mochas have this really bad tendency on the centre console, Mocha Rays, by the way, not the Mocha Bs, Mocha Rays, with this tendency for the silver kind of coating on the centre console to wear off. And this car had that fixed by someone putting a really horrible piece of carbon fibre effect plastic over top of it, which is coming off. The previous car, the brown one, had that problem, but just left the paint to sort of flake off, which is a bit unsightly, but you can get it fixed properly. And I didn't want to take this thing for a test drive, really. The air conditioning didn't work in it either, which is normally a sign of neglect. So it just goes to show, like, if someone can look good in the photographs, you can ring up and ask for questions, and it's fine. But I think I asked about the air conditioning. I think the chap actually lied to me about that. It wasn't great. I don't really like being lied to about when I'm looking at cars. It's not great, not a good look. But yeah, that was sort of the experience. But my client is trying to decide what to do at the moment, whether to take the brown one or to do something else, maybe a little bit more budget for him, I don't know. Because automatic little cars with petrol engines in London are so expensive. So that is a sort of issue, but we'll see what happens about that. But you never know what's going to happen when you turn up. You really do have to see these things yourself. It's something I've always said for years. Otherwise, you just don't really know, which is a shame. I wish I didn't have a job like this, but I do. That's what I have to do, just checking things out very carefully. Anyway, thank you ever so much once again for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, comment below, and we shall see you again soon for some more very vague and not particularly interesting music.